Alright guys, let's go live for the last video today before we sleep. You saw during the day I did one video, and of course we are going to take a very short period through this, and I just feel like this shouldn't go to tomorrow because much of these events have taken place today. So let's quickly just see whatever happened here, and see the nature of what is happening in Kenya actually, and how it is that we would opt to have another way to solve conflict maybe, or rather if Kenya has another way to handle what is happening, it's better. So we said to have this at 23, that is some minutes ahead, but we started early because of course we must rest and have tomorrow as the new day. So 10 Subaru vehicles ferried squad of death in Nairobi. It's a common headline that will be streaming in tomorrow maybe, or in the course of the night. So there were 10 Subarus which were noted to, get into Nairobi, and of course they left a mark of death with several people falling. Currently a report says 19 people in different parts of the country. That is Kangemi involved. We have Ngong. We have the situation of the other side of Kiserian, Kitengela, and other different parts. So we've actually seen finally that, as I said during the day, that SABASABA would be a tragic day with scary ending. We've seen at the end of the day that it did not end well, with young people dying, some who claim to have come from work, some who are just maybe going to buy credit in the shops, and maybe some who are also demonstrating. So we've seen those situations. We've also seen people crying, mourning, and that is not a good scene. So let's look shortly at this before we get into different parts of the country to just see what happened.
Driving into the Kajiado North town of Kiserian, we counted vehicles in the convoy listing at least 10. An organized fleet, most of them high-speed Subaru models. The squad moved in perfect formation, appearing to operate under clear command of individuals within the convoy. More footage we came across provided greater detail. All of them appear to have their faces covered with balaclavas, armed with high-caliber weapons, strapped with full magazine carriers, ready for combat. Here, seen in Ngong town, where gunshots rent the air, and moments after their appearance, bodies lay on the road. One of them, appearing unarmed, left little doubt that he was in command. In Kangemi, 2 people dead, 3 people killed in Ngong, 1 in Kitengela, 1 killed in Kamukunji, and 2 on Jogo Road. We observed the movement of the squad over a series of video clips. Then it became consistent that it was an all-powerful rapid response squad that arrived at any scene of trouble and did as they deemed fit. In Ngong and Kiserian, we observed the squad discharging live ammunition at selected targets. It also became apparent that the squad was not interested in conducting any arrest, except in one video where they appeared to arrest and beat up 2 suspects, bundling them into their vehicle. The deployment of the deadly squad relieves memories of the anti-government protests of June 2024, when a similar, if not the same squad was...
So, of course, you understand that the scenes that were seen take us back to 2024. A similar situation happened, and after the Subarus went around, many people, of course, had to fall. Now, during the day, it seemed like the police had just barricaded, but unfortunately, it happened that looting and destruction went on. And after that, of course, we've had to see that people have been confronted by the police, and we've had shots, and it is what it is. So finally, families are mourning again for the death
inside the supermarket
of the
in search of suspected
families.
looters.
Let's see this later.
One by one, they were fished from their hideouts and escorted to a waiting lorry. 7 suspected looters were arrested, with some hiding suspected stolen items in their pockets. Those arrested were trapped inside after they attacked the supermarket around 3 p.m. as police battled protesters who had barricaded Thika Superhighway. Broken glasses outside showing the extent of damage caused by goons who vandalized properties. Along the Lumumba Drive, the goons on a distraction spree destroyed water pumps along the road. In another daring daylight robbery, criminals are captured on tape entering county supermarket in Kabati, Muranga County, and walking away with goods worth millions of shillings. In the footage, the looters seem to have enough time to steal as other residents go about their businesses. Police officers are later captured outside the supermarket hours after a looting spree, begging the question, where were they as criminals had a field day? In the neighboring Kirinyaga County, angry residents torched Kirinyaga Central NGCDF offices after police officers allegedly shot and injured 2 people in Kagumo area. In Meru, the proprietor of Maguna's supermarket was left counting losses running to millions after suspected criminals.
So you can see the looting does not stop, the shooting does not stop, and so is the hooting. It goes on and on every day, with people calling for change, which we may not see soon because the whoever is in charge is actually determined to ensure that what has to be done has to be done. Now, consider this, for example, with reflection on blames on the government. So the blame games have taken over, with different places people protesting and claiming that they want change. But whatever is happening on the ground, it's a great loss to the citizens, of course, which is going to affect the economy at the end of the day.
SABASABA imekosa mwelekeo kwa sababu maskari vile wako hapa hivi wanajiandaa kuanza kuleta furuku. Vijana wa bodaboda wetu ndio hawa wamekuja kufanya biashara, lakini hakuna vile watafanya biashara. Sasa sijui watafanya namna gani. Town ya Kakamega imefungwa, maduka yote imefungwa. Sasa
now remember, a lot of shops were closed. A lot of shops were closed. So many businesses were closed down. The roads were barricaded. People could not easily get into the main town, Nairobi, and even other towns. There was a lot of restlessness with people roaming around. The young people, of course, I don't know whether it's out of joblessness or idle aspect. They kept roaming, as we can see.
Goma, hundreds of youth poured to the streets, temporarily crippling activities. They were, however, contained by police. The youth.
So the aspect of containing the youth did not take long everywhere, because we can actually see that at the end of the day, by 4, 3 up to 4, things turn hayway, and everything was not as expected. Now, people are mocking Raila Odinga because, as indicated earlier, he has been strong in SABASABA demonstrations. In fact, yesterday it came out as shocking when he stood against what the president had said. President said there's no need for SABASABA, whereas Raila Odinga said SABASABA should go on and he should be going to Kamkunji. However, he did not make it to Kamkunji, which becomes an ironical situation. So, looking at that, of course, people are mocking Raila Odinga, saying it is a funeral, rather end of his political career. And indeed, if you look at the happenings of the day, you don't understand why people should fall, why property should be destroyed, why supermarkets should be torched down, It really sends a lot of, cold shivers, and it creates a very bad picture of whatever was happening around. So in the morning, it was very interesting because the barricade created a picture of a win on the government, indicating that nothing much would have happened. However, As things went on and the 10 people were killed, it became a different scene. So let's see here from the other perspective of Citizen
These
TV.
killings on a single day of protesting raises gunshots and smoke of tear gas. Gunshots and smoke of tear gas dominated this year's commemoration of SABASABA Day. A day that seemed peaceful in the beginning turned chaotic, with protesters clashing with police officers, leaving a trail of death. In Kitengela, 21-year-old Brian Kimutai was shot 2 times and lost his life as fellow protesters rushed him to Kitengela Sub-County Hospital. My younger brother pale wametulia, wamempiga risasi 2, moja hapa na nyingine kwa mgongo, na alikuwa ameinua mikono. Unleashed a bloodbath. A record 7 people were killed with their bodies scattered along the road. 3 people died in Kiserian, while 3 people died in Gong Town, while 1 person died in Mbulbul area near Karen. 2 people also lost their lives in Nyeri, 1 outside Nyeri Family Bank and another outside Kasturi Shop. More deaths were recorded in Muranga, Thika and Naivasha towns. More than 50 people are tonight receiving treatment in various hospitals across the country, while 34 were arrested across the country. And just like that, this year's SABASABA Day celebrations was not marked as anticipated at the Kamukunji grounds in Chauri Moyo. Even as the youth were turned up at the Kamukunji grounds.
So you realize that Kamukunji grounds, nobody stood there. As far as the we saw Raila Odinga having told people that they should meet there, he never turned up. And the young people who met there had no one to lead them. Of course, they always say they are faceless, but whatever happened, we are not very sure. So the incident of theft was so prominent. We saw a lot of destruction and the persistence among the young people who decided that no matter how they were blocked from getting to the city, they will. And of course, at some point, Mlimani, for example, situations of Kitengela, Kiserian, places which has not commonly been having this demonstration had to have such situations, you know. Thika Road was barricaded, but at the end of the day, destruction was clear. Because an example of after Githurai, we have a specific town, Maguna, which was also attacked, you know. Look at this, for example.
Walisalia tu kukodolea macho huku mali yao ikiporwa. Mjini Karatina, uchukuzi ulitatizika baada ya vijana hao kufunga barabara kuu ya Nyeri kwenda Nairobi na kuwasha moto mkubwa huku akiweka vizuizi barabarani. Ililazimu maafisa wa polisi kutumia vitoza machozi kuwatawanya na
now in the process, of course, the police had to suffer too. In the process of all this, the police had to suffer too, because we've seen one picture of a police who was actually injured. Yeah. And so it doesn't become easy for anyone, whether a civilian or a police, everything becomes so complicated. Now we wonder about the instructions which were given, and we also wonder about the, you know, the allegations which Gachagua had been passing across. Just 2 days before this SABASABA, he indicated that we had commissioners who had been met and they had been given instructions to go and handle anybody who dares get to the street, and again arrest people who will have to be sacrificial lambs on such a day. So it becomes a challenge to the young people, because when you look at the parents crying, mourning the death, you wonder what exactly has to be done to stop them from going to the streets, and what has to be done to stop them from being agitated, because it seems there are a lot of idle people around, and no matter how they are stopped from going to these such environments, they don't actually listen. Some of them will be college students. Others will just be people who are idling at home and they lack maybe a duty to do. Now let's look at this situation, for example, where they're chasing, you know, young people and they can't give up. Let's see this.
hundreds of protesters.
That is tear gas for you, and we can actually see what is happening there. We can see the smoke all over, and we can see how people are running around, a crowd emerging, trying to force themselves to the city, the ambulances, and of course doctors had vowed that they'll not come out to help because most times they are targeted, even the police, and they suffer. Now look at that situation where people are coming with masks, having masked themselves. No one can actually see who they are. People confidently running around, as the police throw tear gas, somebody kneels with a flag, and the young people are not afraid of anything. Then we can see sometimes how parents have to come by. So Murkomen then comes and addresses the people.
Kipchumba Murkomen described the protests as, quote,
now the situation becomes a blame game. Let's see this one, for example, the scene here. Those are determined people who do not care what will happen to them because they are kneeling, ready to have whatever they'll experience, Now, when you look at these situations in Kenya, then I realize that things are quite, interesting. And the fact that RAILA came out yesterday and he's part of the broadband government and said that young people should go to the streets. That is why we wonder, did he trick the government into the broad-based government? Is he also hatching a plan that we are not very sure of? Or what exactly is happening? Now, let's get the perspective of another reactor here. David Wafula is a prominent reactor. Yeah. And he said that RUTO and Murkomen would suffer the resounding defeat. I don't know whether that is true, actually.
Second thing that I observed today is motorbikes have been stolen. There are some goons who have been organized to steal goods. True or false, just reroute them, but
Social media are calling for me to be arrested for inciting people to violence, even though all we have done.
So we have also seen that Laura Mador has been targeted, and he's been indicated to be inciting the protesters.
Is report what's going on. Call out police brutality and show the people the truth.
when they go to police stations.
Because he's been showing the truth about what is happening on the streets. Now look at this, for example. It also happened.
I'm telling you, this group of Gen Z is ungovernable. Number 5, CBD was no man's land, so that's good news for vendors. If you have a business, if you have any shares or stake.
Yeah, and of course it was so good that they really protected the people's property in the city. So even as people shouted whatever they did, the city was not invaded as much. And so the business owners in the city may not have a lot to cry. But on the other side, we can see that the owner of Maguna, the county supermarket, and many other places were affected. Now, in the Naivasha situation,
chaotic in Nyandarua, where one man was shot dead at Tumaini area during confrontation between police.
Now, I don't know why the young people in Kenya again are deciding to torch down the police station, because like the situation of Naivasha, where they had to torch down a station, and in the process, the KDF soldiers were deployed and they killed one young person. See this picture, for example.
And protesters, one police officer and a resident were also injured. In Naivasha, transport along the Nairobi-Nakuru highway was paralyzed as protesters barricaded the busy route at Kayole until this evening when KDF soldiers were deployed to reopen the road.
Toka saa 3:30 tukaambiwa tufunge biashara zetu kwa sababu ya usalama wetu.
Kila kona waandamane, lakini biashara mtu achane na.
The police erected.
Now it becomes a hard task when the police, instead of now handling protection, they have to keep handling demonstrations. Now this does not occur well with the country because it creates a negative picture. And in fact, we know that tourists in Kenya come in August most of the times. Now what's going to happen, because as people look around and see what is happening in Kenya, what picture does it send to the world? To the tourists, for example, what does it send? Do they feel like Kenya is still a safe country where we've been always saying hakuna matata for individuals to come from other countries and enjoy their holidays here? Now, especially Nairobi, which is the CBD, it's a tall order, and people will be always afraid to maybe walk in sooner or later, because these are pictures that are going onto the, I saw Al Jazeera, for example, reporting, and they were reporting the situations of the city, which were not very fine. In the if you look at the international image, that is the decorum that we've always had. The aspect of thinking that Kenya hakuna matata has become a different narrative with a different kind of Gen Z. And the other situation is that crime is also on the rise, because now as people protest around and they're jobless, it happens that these people are so idle and they are learning to use violence all the time. So what happens is that with time, if they are not going to loot, what will happen? The people will be, these people will turn into criminals, and they'll easily be, grabbing things from people. If you travel to Nairobi, for example, you will always expect something of that sort to happen to you. Some of them may even go to the extent of now houses, because I'm looking at a situation whereby after they can't loot from shops as they were doing during protests, if they were confidently doing this and they know people are recording, what about the houses now which are unguarded, some of them without CCTVs? Yeah. David Otieno, hi. Victory, hi. Welcome on board. Thank you so much. I was so engrossed in talking. Sometimes you need somebody maybe to actually chat those who are coming by, so that you actually have a conversation that keeps you going as you continue with the discussion. But actually things are not very good in Kenya, because I'm looking at what the future holds, not just today. Now let's look at here, for example, I've shown Western region, I've shown Murang'a, I've shown Nairobi CBD. There was this aspect of
KTN. Ripoti za leo alasiri zinaashiria kuwa maafisa kwenye makabiliano baina ya wakazi na maafisa wa polisi. Katika kaunti ya Nakuru, uchukuzi ulisitishwa kwenye barabara kuu ya Nairobi.
Of course, it's just a repetitive aspect of how things had to be stopped. People not traveling anywhere. Today, if you had a journey to Nairobi using the road, it was so difficult. Maybe you use the plane, airport, and something like that. Now, the former detainees warned RUTO against, they warned him against ignoring the youth. Reminding him that the youth are desperate, some of them are jobless, some of them have a lot of energy, and because of that they may be going to the streets anytime. When they hear about demonstrations, even when the police barricade, they will not give up. Some of them are ready to pour their blood, but you can see that in some of the videos I've shown you, some were sitting literally on the tarmac, and they were not even, scared of anything. Some of them were even confronting the police. So it means there is more than meets an eye, more than meets an eye. When you see the major violence that is happening here, I'm seeing a situation where if we don't stop it, then Kenya is going to be a country whereby we will have people ready to always go to the streets, steal, Look at that. Now, when you go to TikTok, Facebook, and all over, it has turned out that our country has become a mockery, a mockery. Our country has turned into a mockery, and with the people confronting with the police, creating a scene whereby now we are becoming civilians against the police, the young people against the police. So when will this war between the civilians and the police end, for example? When will the war between the Gen Z and the police end? Because I'm very sure very soon, the civilians who are not in the police will see the police as enemies, as a battle. They'll always have the battleground. Something that we had forgotten. It was almost being put to the past before things went from bad to worst, And I'm just looking at it, and no wonder recently I compared the situation of Jamaica and Kenya, and I looked at Kenya and said we are doing badly, because business people cry over losses when, like even in Mombasa situation, which we've always been thinking that there was nothing, By 4, people are saying like nothing is really happening.
There was a heavy
But
presence
then
of
this is
police,
it.
both in uniform and in civilian, especially on the island, as they thwarted any efforts to hold protests.
Serikali kupitia mikono yake imeweza kuamuru SGR kucancel transportation ya wananchi kutoka Mombasa mpaka Nairobi. You cannot suspend or subvert the will of the people. Ukiona tumeboycott, wengi wetu wameboycott, manake tumeona pia kuna wanasiasa ambao wametaka kuingililia maandamano yetu ya leo ili waweze kubeba credit, waongeze bargaining power yao. Miaka ilizopita tumekuwa tukicommemorate Sabasaba, lakini leo tumegadhabishwa.
Most of the showrooms here in Mombasa, they are closed.
Now, a lot of showrooms, if you have been in Mombasa, the showrooms in the main center, there are so many, with a lot of Indians and Arabs doing a lot of business there. Now, unfortunately, today, Mombasa Island, it was peaceful with a lot of showrooms closed because people are very afraid of the losses made during such demonstrations. Now, what does it mean by shops being closed on such a day? A whole day, no shop being opened. It means that we are losing as a country economically. We continue to lose as we continue complaining and using such fights. Now, when you look at Nairobi case whereby so many shops have been burned down, what does that mean? Economic loss again. And do you think the government will pay for anything or anybody else? It won't. Even those who will be arrested, some of them are jobless, desperate people without jobs, so they can't pay for whatever loss has been made, right? So this is clear that we are doing very badly as Kenya. See at one point whereby
kwa takriban dakika 30 ni kufahamisha taarifa kwa kina wanakwetu wananiita Joashua Nsare mtafsiri kwa
I want you to see Kisii situation. The Kisii situation.
Wanaji wakilazimika kukimbia.
Let's see the Kisii situation before we end this.
Hifadhi salama baada ya baadhi yao.
Now in Kisii, this is what happened. And some of the young people had to be shot. Yeah. Had to be shot as they were demonstrating. So some specific, look at that. It's so sad anyway. You can see that kind of those tools which were used to target some of the young people, and they were shot when they were trying to demonstrate, right? Now, it surprises me how people don't even learn. Maybe I'm very sure in most of the hospitals in Kenya, there are people who are either shot, those who are just hurt, those who are maybe affected in one way or another. And away from that, I think we are going to have conditions that arise, especially respiratory illnesses arising from the tear gases and shots we are seeing around, the smoke, the burning of items in the streets. We may also have a lot of trauma cases very soon, with people, feeling like they are being followed, people feeling like they're being shot, people feeling like they're being attacked. Because this is what happens. When I go into the history of nations where we've had such kind of situations, people are not very healthy, You look at nations where such situations have been, we've had situations of illnesses that are not understood. Or if they're understood, of course, the source is an environment full of war, chaotic situations, violence, people crying, uncertainties that come about with people dying of, prematurely. And so their parents get into depression, or rather having conditions of the heart, or other related situations. So it's not a very good thing, because I'm looking at the long-term impact. What is the long impact of the aspect of maandamano or demonstrations, Because as I've said in most of my videos, in Kenya, we cannot have peaceful demonstrations. Why? The first reason is we have infiltration of political individuals who are interested, whether they're in government or opposition. The second thing why we can't have peaceful demonstration, the police in Kenya are trained to attack. Anytime they see somebody maybe walking on the streets, confronting them, they decide to attack, either by tear gas or whatever. We've seen even situation of universities when students are striking, the police just go in and throw tear gas. And that already creates an environment where people will be running up and down and trying to confront, also pick stones and throw back. The other third thing why we cannot have peaceful demonstrations, people have learned that violence is the best, because our leaders in Kenya talk about violence. They talk about violence because we've seen the CS Murkomen, we've seen Sudi, we've seen Farouk, we've seen even Gachagua at one point, we've seen RUTO himself saying, hatutakubali ujinga, hatutakubali upuzi, tutatumia nguvu and all that. So all that they say is violence, and they have castigated the spirit of violence, that no one is ready to have negotiation or talks or even picket peacefully. Another thing is that we have also idlers, a lot of idlers, a lot of jobless people, a lot of people are just waiting for a moment to steal. And so whenever we have demonstrations, young people or whichever group, they run to steal. Then if you look at this group of 10 Subaru vehicles ferrying squads of death, for example, we have this group within the government, or whether it's the police or whatever, this group that Gachagua talked about of the 110, they are there to attack and prove that they are working. So they go about, kill people, shoot, and leave, and the reggae continues. We have personal interest in this thing also, if you look at it, Like people are fighting, they are not telling us as citizens, but they are fighting. They are fighting their own cause. So we may never have anything to do with peaceful demonstrations, And that is why all the time there are strikes. Even in colleges, it ends up with this kind of protest. Yeah, so guys, as we continue to talk about Gen Zs, let us ask ourselves, is this Gen Z's cause only? Or is Raila Odinga involved? Is Gachagua involved? Is Murkomen involved? Is Farouk involved? Is Ichungwa involved? Is our president involved? Is Oscar Sudi involved? Is Watalam involved? is our governor for Nairobi involved? And so many other people. So that as we point fingers at the president alone or whatever it is, we must understand that there is a very thick narrative. We saw yesterday the MPs of Nairobi sitting together and telling the young people not to go to the streets because this is now a political war. On the other side, we've seen some people insisting that the Gen Zs are fighting their cause and they are faceless. Let them go to the streets. So who is telling us what? So guys, because it's very late in the night, let me go rest. We will meet tomorrow to have other discussions. The discussions will never end. Of course, you've seen I've already booked some of the discussion on the wall. Thank you so much for being there. I really appreciate. Mutunga Mulwa is just coming in. I really appreciate your presence. But now that I've really done a lot of analysis and discussion, you may drop your comments on the comment section down below. And I really appreciate. You can give me like. I really thank you that today I've had at least 4 likes. And I've had people who have kept on their presence up to now. So it's just that's a very good show from you. If you not subscribe to the channel, also consider subscribing because this is a political war that is happening. And politics is our game. We have to talk about it so that in case there is something that we have to understand, we make people understand. In case we have families who have to understand what's happening and avoid trouble, we must inform them. In case there is a way that the country will get to solve problems without necessarily having demonstrations, we better come up with that. And it is us, citizens, as we go through these YouTube discussions, live streams and understanding of what is happening, seeing the consequences of actually what is running in the streets will have on us, the haunting effect that will remain with us, so that at the end of the day, we create a better nation for tomorrow that will make our future whole. Thank you. Good night.